so much. We have got a lot of beautiful music lined up for you folks too during the course of these lectures. But for the reason you're here, I guess we'll not delay it any longer. We're very excited to have Vadim Butov here from Avondale, Australia. He's got a very interesting background. I'm assuming he'll be sharing some of that with you. But we're excited to have him here, and I know you're going to be blessed as he's going to be sharing night after night with us. And so, Pastor Vadim, we're very happy to have you here.
Well, good evening. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a great delight to see you at the first program of Amazing Discoveries. At first, let us get acquainted. And first of all, let me ask you, did you come here tonight because you received this colorful invitation? Could I see the hands of those who came because you saw the colorful and wonderful? Thank you very much. Now, could I see the hands of those who came here because you saw our advertisement on television? Is there anyone? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Could I see the hands of those who came here because you heard our announcement on the radio? Is there anyone? Okay, wonderful. They're in the cheap seats. Thank you. And let me see the hands of those who came here because a friend invited you to come. Oh, yes, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Well, my name is Vadim Butov. I come to you from Avondale College, which is a tertiary educational institution, just 100 kilometers, which is 65 miles north of Sydney. And my accent will betray me that English is not my first language. English is my second language, among many others. But in the meantime, I'm an Australian citizen, and I've been living in Australia for many years. I've got a family. My wife is a doctor of philosophy. I've got two children, 9 and 13 years old. And I'm here for one purpose. I'm here for a public community educational program. And as we proceed along our lectures, in the future I'll tell you more about myself, I'll learn more about you. I've been trying to read a lot about Lexington, trying to understand the mentality of people here. You see, in Australia we hear about Kentucky mainly because of KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And my son, actually at school, I once was on the bus with school children, and for an excursion I was one of the parents who was helping children in the bus, and every time the bus would go by KFC, the Australian children would sing, "It's Kids Fattening Centre." Okay, they actually don't know that it's Kentucky Fried Chicken. In Australia they say it's Kids Fattening Centre. But I knew about Kentucky due to Kentucky Derby, or Derby as you call it. It's the horses' capital of the United States. Very beautiful country. And Lexington, being in the heart of the state, I believe has the heart of the people here in this state. When I was reading about Lexington, I discovered that from numerous sources that Lexington is the fourth wealthiest city in the United States when it comes to the average income per capita. And when you run around the city, it's so beautiful, it's so advanced. I think it's #1 city in the United States, not #4. And also I was delighted to discover that Lexington is one of the 10 most educated cities in the United States of America. And that is what I love. I love audiences which are smart and intelligent, and I love audiences who bring to my lectures and seminars tons of sharp and provocative questions. Beginning tomorrow, we'll be giving you cards in the lobby for you to write questions, and every night we'll dedicate a certain amount of time to answer your questions. So I believe that these seminars will not be just me lecturing to you. We want interaction, we want feedback from our audience. And first of all, I would like to let every single participant know that we deeply respect your views and your convictions and your positions on various things, historical, social, political, religious, and we want you to feel comfortable and respected at these meetings. And please feel free to completely disagree with what I'm going to share with you. All I'm going to do is just give you a good volume of information And I believe that it is going to be very beneficial for you and the quality of your lives. But at the same time, I want you to feel free and happy at these meetings. Of course, many of you who came to this program may say, well, whatever you're going to present, it sounds a little bit suspicious because you invite people, spend a lot of money inviting them to this program, and it says free admission, it's going to be presents and gifts. We're going to have a number of books to give you. This beautiful book, which is a scientific book you'll receive on the 3rd night, on Monday. We're going to have the 2nd book on the 7th program, and we're going to have a 3rd book on the 10th program. All together from tonight, May 13 to May 28, we have planned 11 programs. So there will be 11 seminars. Tonight it's the introduction, and then there is going to be 10 additional programs. The first 7 programs are advertised in your bulletin, which you received by mail or in person, and we are going to give you the printout of the extra 4 seminars as time approaches. Of course, some people ask, well, it sounds a little bit suspicious, a free program, free seminar, free event, free everything. We know somebody said that, that free is cheese in a mousetrap. And is there anything in the background? Is there anything conspirational? Is there any conspiracy behind this seminar? Well, let me assure every visitor, every participant of our programs that there's no conspiracy behind these seminars, no secret agendas, no secret plans or mysterious goals. All we want is for you to receive a lot of benefit from a lot of information which was collected in dozens of world universities, which will definitely upgrade the quality of your lives. And we want nothing in response, nothing. We don't want your money. We don't want your allegiance. We don't want anything from you. All we want is just a one-way kick of the ball. We want to give you a benefit. We want to give you a blessing. We want you to have pleasure when you come to these programs, okay? So I want to assure you about this from the very start. Our program tomorrow, as you may have noticed, is entitled The Mystery of an Ancient King's Dream. Tomorrow we will look at the history of ancient nations of the Middle East. We'll look at the great transfer of nations of the beginning of the Middle Ages. We'll try to cover more than 2,500 years of global history in just one lecture tomorrow, and connected to the writings of ancient prophets who lived in ancient Babylonia. As for tonight, I'm going to offer you, by the way, how does this thing work? It seems that my, oh, okay, it works now. Do you see the picture on the screen? Everybody's clear? Don't break your necks because the screen is very high. And when you look up all the time, then you'll be walking home or driving home and looking up all the time like this, okay? So be careful with your necks. Just look up only once in a while. But our first presentation tonight is called Loneliness. Is there a way out? Loneliness. Is there a way out? These words fall from the lips of thousands of people in various places today. And loneliness is a problem of many retirees. Often they feel abandoned and ignored, even by their own children and relatives. Loneliness is a problem of many disabled people. Often they shed full of depression tears of utter life's disappointment, often suffering from chronic pain, nerve pain, and all kinds of social challenges. Loneliness is becoming very widespread among many young people. Last year, when I did the seminar in March and April in New York, I read a number of studies which were done in New York, and they discovered that in New York City, young people are suffering from loneliness more than anyone else. And many young people today are trying to fill the vacuum in their hearts with alcohol and drugs, the psychoactive substances, which create only a visibility of happiness, a mirage, after which there follows bitter disappointment. Some young people even choose the path of crime, often shedding the blood of their innocent victims on their life's paths. Loneliness, bitterness, depression, heartbrokenness, meaninglessness of life. These and many other negative emotions are crushing modern society today. And even those who live in Kentucky are no exception to this. Just look at some statistical and medical reports in this state and you will find a similar problem. And people ask a question: loneliness, the brokenness of my heart, meaninglessness of life. Is there a way out? Now, people are trying to turn to different sources of information looking for answers. In my hands, I hold the book on which this country was built. Originally, the great Pilgrim Fathers who left Europe and founded this country 400 years ago, they were reading this ancient book and they were trying to create legislature, laws, which would be based on the principles of this book. The writer of the American Constitution, great Thomas Jefferson, he was reading this book every day, and when he was producing the greatest set of laws ever done by human beings, he was looking for answers in this book. The culture of America is also based on this book. The lifestyle of Americans is reflected by this book. But today we're living in the 21st century, in an age of skepticism and cynicism, and in a time when people ask questions. People just don't want to believe blindly, only because your parents believed or grandparents believed. People don't want to believe just because it looks attractive or because it's a culture of my country or the culture of my city. There are many doubts. I grew up in a society in the former Soviet Union where 99.9% of the population were atheists and unbelievers, and they just did not believe at all. And they produced numerous documents and sources trying to disprove the existence of the supernatural and the facts, and they were trying to portray all the sacred books of various religions, like the Christian Bible or the Muslim Quran or the three baskets of Buddhists and many other sources, as collections of ancient myths. And they said, well, all of these documents need to be taken to the cemetery of history. Well, the question is, could a modern and intelligent person believe that the Bible, which is at the foundation of the American nation, is a trustworthy document? Let me take your attention just for a few moments to some discoveries made in the Middle East in the past 100 years. In 1947, in the place called Qumran on the shores of the Dead Sea, and that's where you have the so-called Judean desert, a lonely Arab shepherd boy was wandering around different caves looking for a lost goat. And when he was walking around, he approached one of the caves, took a big stone and threw it inside. Instead of hearing the goat, he heard the sound of broken pottery. And as he jumped inside, he realized that it was not big treasures, gold, silver, or diamonds that he discovered. He found big clay jars filled with old, rugged scrolls. And he never realized, that poor boy, Muhammad ad-Din, that he made one of the best and the most significant archaeological discoveries of all time. He found the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls. Those were the most ancient manuscripts of the Old Testament ever found. Some of them were 2,300 years old. And a lot of scholars took those manuscripts. They found hundreds and hundreds of them, and they compared them with later versions, which were 1,000 years later. Because some critics said the Bible is unreliable for one reason. People had to copy it by hand, and thus many mistakes and alterations crawled into the text. Well, the discoveries of the Dead Sea Scrolls showed that this book came to our time unaltered and unchanged. A similar discovery was made on the Sinai Peninsula. It's Egypt today, and right at the foot of Mount Sinai, which is the highest mountain, 2.2 kilometers high, it's roughly 1.5 miles, there is St. Catherine's Monastery. An Englishman, Robert Tischendorf, at the end of the 19th century, visited this monastery and accidentally found some scrolls which the monks were trying to dispose of because they thought they were old and no longer had any value. He found the scroll which was called the Sinai Codex, which is one of the most ancient full scripts of the New Testament. And the diligent study of that manuscript showed that even the New Testament came to our times unchanged. When scientists look at how ancient copyists were copying the text, they are marveled and amazed. A copyist would count the number of letters in the original and then in several weeks or even months complete his hard work by producing a copy. And then he would count the number of letters in the copy, and having done that, he would compare the original and the copy, and if the number differed by one letter, he would burn the copy and start the work again. That's how thoroughly and diligently this book was being copied through the ages. And up to date, we've collected over 2,000 manuscripts of the Old Testament and over 20,000 manuscripts of the New Testament, which all tell us one thing: the text of this book hasn't changed in thousands of years. And also, some people said, well, maybe the people and the heroes this book is talking about never lived and they were invented. Maybe these are just fables and fairy tales which people used to tell each other on Oriental markets 2,000 years ago. Let me give you just a few examples to reverse that opinion. What you see here is a collection of clay tablets in the place called Ebla. Today, the attention of the entire world is drawn to Syria, the hot spot of human civilization. That's where a lot of forces collide. The Western civilization, Russia, Syrian government, ISIS, the Syrian rebels. Today, in Syria, there are many forces taking lives of each other. Well, it is in Syria where they found the biggest library of clay tablets just a few decades ago. And there once was a civilization called Ebla civilization, and they kept thorough records of what was happening to them and their interaction with different nations. It was here on these tablets that they found for the first time the recording of ancient people like Abraham and Isaac. Have you heard about Abraham and Isaac? Well, Abraham we're talking about is not Abraham Lincoln. It's an ancient Abraham, one of the patriarchs found in Scripture, because some critics said he never existed. Well, the discoveries in Ebla show that he is a real historical figure. Abraham did live, and Isaac, his son, is also mentioned in these tablets. Someone else mentioned a piece of critique. They said that David, the king of Israel, one of the greatest kings and the symbol of the Israeli nation, he never existed. He was also invented. And the Star of David, as you know, was never produced in biblical times. The Star of David was invented only in the Middle Ages. Well, well-known archaeologist from Andrews University, Dr. Randy Younker, reports that just 15 years ago, during the exploration of the biggest temple complex in the world, this is the biggest worship place ever built by human hand, about 3,000 years ago, they found a script which mentions David, the king of Israel. They found that David and the Egyptians had trade agreements, and they traded with each other. So this discovery in Karnak, in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, showed that David did indeed live. And tomorrow we'll go back to the Middle East and we'll search for Sodom and Gomorrah and many other places which in the past were questioned. And you will be marveled and amazed to discover the truth. And that every year archaeology is finding more and more and more evidence to prove that this black book which I hold in my hands, on which American culture and history and government and country were once founded and built, this book is a reliable historical source. It's a book which does not contain myths and fairy tales. It contains truthful information which is verified by history and archaeology. But now let me draw your attention a little bit away from the Middle East. Let's go to the desert, Sinai Peninsula, and there you see a lonely traveler. It was ancient patriarch Jacob, 4,000 years ago. Just in your mind, travel to the Middle East. And there among the sands, and there among the rocks, walks a lonely pilgrim. He ran away from home, having quarreled with his own brother, deceived his own father. And there he was in the wilderness, lonely, abandoned by everyone, desperate and very depressed. And once he got tired, fell asleep on the stones, and at night he saw a very strange dream. And in the dream he heard the words, "I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Someone at night gave him a promise that I will take care of you. You have nothing in your pockets. You have a rugged garment with holes in it. But I will take care of you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, the ancient script says, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He believed that what happened to him was not just a nightmare, it was a revelation of the great cosmic supernatural force. And he believed this force, and he believed this God, and we know that years and decades later he would have a family, a host of children. He would come back to his fatherland, and he would be able to embrace his father and see his death. He would be able to get reconciled to his brother, whom he deceived once. He would live a fulfilled, prosperous, and abundant life. God kept his words that he gave to Jacob. Well, some people say, well, that happened 4,000 years ago. But we are living in an age and time when every day they issue 2,000 new patents for new discoveries. We are living in an age when technology accelerates and multiplies exponentially. We're living in an age when we're amazed. The planes that are flown today are like flying computers. They virtually fly themselves. The Americans just a couple of weeks ago completed a 2-year mission test of a big spacecraft, which is supposed to be one of the most advanced machines in space technology. NASA is developing a plan to send human beings to Mars in the next 15 or 20 years. Today, you could cross the Pacific Ocean, like myself, in 14 hours. Just think of it. We're living in an age of speed, in an age of technological advancement. Even now, I know that in this audience, many of you have your iPhones handy, sitting just on the right hand of you, and you are seeing how little text messages are appearing here and there. You no longer use telegrams. You are using high tech everywhere you go. Look at your cars filled with air conditioners and climate controls, all kinds of gadgets which help you drive better. Tesla is producing a car which is like a robot. It drives itself on the streets of America. Well, the question is, could or can a modern man believe in the supernatural or believe in the existence of God? And with so much advancement in the world of physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy, mathematics, could modern human beings believe in something they can't see or hear or smell and check empirically or on the basis of human experience? Well, let me suggest to you some words from the ancient text. This prophet lived 2,800 years ago, and he suggested, "Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name because of his great power and mighty strength. Not one of them is missing." The book, this ancient book, suggests that in our search for the supernatural, let's go to the skies. Let's address the universe. When a big Apollo spacecraft circled the moon for the first time, the astronauts opened their Bibles and they, looking at the moon and its distant mum, planet Earth, read these words: In the beginning, God did what? Created the heavens and the earth. It was broadcast by American media of the time, radio, and that primitive television. Most of people at that time had black and white televisions, but it was broadcast. The message, the world was made. Well, let us travel to space today with astronauts and cosmonauts. Let us take the Space Shuttle Challenger or Columbia or Atlantis or Discovery. Let us take the Russian Soyuz rocket and travel to the International Space Station. Let's look inside the Hubble Space Telescope and other great telescopes like the one on Mount Palomar, and look into the depth of space and see maybe we could find something amazing and even supernatural there. Ancient people, in the days of Herodotus, the great Greek historian and philosopher, believed that there were 5,119 stars in heaven. And I think most of you, when you spoke to your parents when you were little children, looking up in the skies, you asked them a question: how many stars are there in the sky? Well, this question is still explored by astronomy and astrophysics today. There are many, many stars. The Hubble Space Telescope tells us that in recent 10 years, 15 years, the universe was multiplied in size in the minds of astronomers at least 40 times. Ancient prophet Jeremiah, who lived 2,500 years ago, said that the stars and the people could be as countless as the stars in the sky. Could we count the stars in the sky? What you see here on the screen is a picture of one of the galaxies, and you see those bright spots on the screen. Each one of those bright spots is not a star, it's a galaxy itself, and each bright spot contains at least 100 billion stars. There are many, many stars in the universe. One ancient patriarch said, like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. Well, one astronomer said that if you count all the grains of sand on all the beaches of the world, you will get an approximate number of the stars in the universe. One friend of mine, a scientist from Estonia, he decided to make an experiment. He took a little glass and decided to count how many grains of sand would fit in a small 100-millimeter glass. And he was a Baltic person. Estonians are told to be very patient people. And he spent 1 hour putting little grains of sand and counting them and writing down numbers. He continued for 7 months. But even his Estonian patience was exhausted after countless hours of counting, when he filled that glass only by 10%. Now, can you imagine, just don't go too far, go on the beaches of California or the beautiful sandy beaches of Australia or anywhere you go around the world, and just throw sand in the sky and think of every grain of sand. That's how many stars there are in the universe. The universe is vast, it's huge, and we know that the stars are also separated by gigantic distances. 3,500 years ago, in the book of Job, it was said, "Is not God in the heights of heaven? And see how lofty are the highest stars." Well, we know that our nearest neighbor, the sun, is quite far from us. But besides the sun and the solar system, the other neighbor we have is a star to which it'll take you to travel with modern speeds available to men 120,000 years. Can you imagine if you get into a good spacecraft and you will be able to achieve the best speed ever reached by a human spacecraft? It's about 35,000 miles an hour. And you travel with 35,000 miles an hour for 120,000 years. That's the time you will need to reach our nearest neighbor, a star which is called Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri. And light, the giver of life, travels 4 years from that star to planet Earth. So when the astronomers look into the telescope today and they see the star, it's not the star they're seeing, it's they see the light, which took 4 years to travel from that star to us. And that is our nearest neighbor besides the sun. So can you imagine, there are many, many stars in the universe. They're separated by huge, enormous distances. And we know that in the universe they're traveling with enormous speeds. Now, on most American freeways, what is the speed limit? Can you tell me, what is the speed limit on most American freeways? 70? Oh, you're lucky. Well, yeah, 70, thank you. Let's make it 70, okay? Let's write a letter to the American president and ask him, please make it 70 everywhere, okay? Because in many states it's 65 only. But 70 miles an hour is a good speed. Now, can you imagine you're driving on a freeway and some reckless driver decides to drive a bit faster. And you're in that car with that reckless driver, and he's driving not 70 miles an hour, but he's driving 140 miles an hour. I think you will feel a little bit uncomfortable. A little bit uncomfortable. But can you imagine? Our galaxy, the Milky Way system in which we all live today, is currently moving in space with a speed of 70,000 miles per hour. That's the speed which we are traveling now with the solar system and the Milky Way system, our great galaxy. We're not blown off as dust from this earth because of gravity. Gravity holds us on this planet, because if there were no gravity, we would be blown off very quickly like cosmic dust. But that's the speed with which our galaxy is traveling today. So there are many stars. They're separated by huge distances. They're traveling with great speeds. And it's interesting to note that they're not colliding with each other. Somehow, some laws of heavenly mechanics prevent the universe from those gigantic, destructive explosions. And we find, now how do I... let me tell you, I was given a piece of technology that I'm still learning to operate. Oh, don't allow. Huh. Well, someone who is intelligent enough in this audience, could you please teach me how to... the slides are mine, but this piece of technology isn't. All it says is Saturday, May 13. It's no notifications. It's looking at me as if it doesn't want to listen to my lecture anymore. Oh, it's asking for a password. Fancy that. Wow. Ooh. Well, I'm lucky it wasn't the computer of an aircraft in the middle of a flight. Thank you very much. Well, let's continue. And at the same time, the entire universe is subject to the laws of heavenly mechanics. Everything is in great order. And the book of Psalms, 3,000 years ago, declared, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge." So the skies declare that they did not come about by a blind chance. You know about the Big Bang theory. Most physicists will tell you that since the days of Albert Einstein and his discovery of the theory of relativity, today official science declares that the universe appeared because of the gigantic explosion of energy some 15 billion years ago. Einstein proved by discovering the so-called red shifts in the universe that the universe is not static, it's expanding and moving all the time. So, and it's moving away from the center of that gigantic explosion of energy. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you imagine that you go to Bluegrass Airport, not far from Lexington, and you take, say, a Boeing 737, but not the aircraft itself, but hundreds of thousands of parts it's made of. The seats are separate, the engines are separate, the rudder is separate, the flaps are separate, the wings are separate, the cockpit, the avionics, everything is lying separately. And then you bring a truckload, a good Dodge Ram full of dynamite in the middle of it. And you bring about an explosion. All of these particles flow up in the air, the seats, the rudder, the flaps, the stabilizer, all the parts of the plane. You close your eyes and you brace yourself, and then you open your eyes, and there in front of you stands a brand new Boeing 737 of Delta Airlines, painted, fresh, ready to fly. Could an intelligent person believe that an explosion could produce order? Those who know anything about dynamite or any explosives know that if you blow something uncontrollably, it brings chaos and disorder. Well, how could the universe be so orderly that we check our times, years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes and seconds by the movement of heavenly bodies? No engineer has ever produced a piece of machinery which is so precise as the movement of heavenly bodies. How could all that order appear just randomly by blind chance out of nothing, out of vacuum? It's only when you have a controlled explosion that you have order. For example, America boasts the best road system in the world. General Eisenhower, after the Second World War, looking at the German Autobahn, said, I'll build a better system in North America. And when you go from here, say, to the western states, you often go through the Rocky Mountains, the Grand Canyon, and you see that many freeways which were built, they used tons and tons of explosives to break through those mountains, build channels, tunnels, etc. Those were what we call controlled explosions. They were planned, designed to break and pave the way for a new freeway to be built. So the Big Bang was not a chaotic, random explosion which brought about the universe. It was a planned, designed, intelligent explosion which brought about this great and intelligently designed universe. Leonardo da Vinci, the great Italian artist, who was also a great scientist, used to say, I believe in my Lord, the first engine. He believed that there was the first reason for this universe to appear. Thomas Aquinas, a great medieval philosopher, said that this is what we call the cosmological proof of God. This universe, if it has a beginning, this beginning, by the looks of it, must be very intelligent. So there must be some intelligent force which is above space and time, which once made the whole universe. In the book of Colossians, one ancient preacher said, He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. But let us come down back to this planet. Let's forget about the universe for a while, and let's come down to planet Earth and see what is happening around us here. If you go to the seashore, to the beach, and you see footprints on the sand, those footprints will tell you that someone left those footprints. It could have been a dog or a human being or someone else, but footprints are telling us someone was here. If you look at the world of nature, which surrounds us today, you will see the footprints of the supernatural. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. The nature is an amazing book. Look at its beauties, at its colors, at how it smells and sounds and tastes. Everything in the world of nature, from the highest mountain to the smallest drop of dew, tells human beings that there must be a great artist who once designed this and brings so much pleasure just by gazing and looking at the world of nature. In the book of Psalms it says, glorious and majestic are His deeds, and His righteousness endures forever. But the creation of God in this world is not only beautiful and charming, it's also very intelligent and very intelligently designed. You take the snowflakes, which preserve life in the cold areas of the world. By the way, I was born and grew up in Siberia, in the coldest inhabited place on planet Earth. And I still remember my childhood when we used to listen to the radio in the morning and see if the school is open. In my area, the schools would close when it was 35 degrees below zero. So in the morning, we would look at the thermometer. It's 47 below zero. And our parents are saying, well, the schools are closed. They've just made an announcement on the radio. And we as children, we remember the good times. We would put on our skis and skates and go out and play the whole day. When it was 45 or 47 below zero, we had a great time. But snow protects life in cold areas of the world. And each snowflake is a marvel of geometry. You will never find two snowflakes which are alike. And the very position of this planet may tell us a lot, because one physicist said that if you bring this planet closer to the sun just by 5% of its distance, we're all going to burn. We'll become a lifeless, hot desert. If you take away this planet from the sun by 5% of its distance, we will become a cold, frozen wilderness. Even on the equator, the temperatures will be about 100 degrees minus. Okay? You find a lot of marvels wherever you go. Take the trees. These are great eucalyptus trees of Australia. They pump water to the heights of over 100 yards, 110, 120 yards through the complex system of capillaries. You take the reaction called photosynthesis. Now, we know that all of the green plants, and Kentucky is a beautiful green state, all of the green plants, they absorb carbon dioxide, CO2, and they release into the atmosphere something that we all need for life. What do they release? Tell me. Oxygen. And they accumulate carbohydrates, which are necessary for life. Now, this process in green plants is called photosynthesis. It's a complex biochemical reaction. It actually consists of 70 different biochemical reactions. Well, in the Soviet Union in the 1970s, they decided to launch an experiment. They chose the best academics in the world of biology and biochemistry. And they decided to reproduce photosynthesis artificially. And they said, if we could produce photosynthesis, which is happening in green plants artificially, then we could feed all the people in the world and provide as much oxygen as necessary. The carbon footprint will never be a problem. We will meet all the challenges of modern mankind. The experiment lasted for over a decade. And scientists knew the chemical formulas of every biochemical reaction of photosynthesis. They knew them. They could break them down. They knew every little bit of it, all the molecular structures. But they were unable to combine them into one reaction through numerous, thousands of various experiments. The experiment was closed. It was very unsuccessful and fruitless. I have a question for you. If a group of academics with good brains could not produce photosynthesis artificially, how could it make itself without any mind? How could it randomly collide and make itself? I believe there must be something supernatural behind it. Wherever you go, in the wilderness or in the forest, you will find more and more evidence to tell modern human beings that there must be something supernatural behind all of these things. And we know that this world was not made just to be like a clock mechanism, forgot to start the mechanism and just let it go. It was designed for a great purpose. Prophet Isaiah says, He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be what? Could you read it for me? Inhabited. This world was made for a lot of inhabitants. But look at the inhabitants of this world. Take the birds, for example, and their flight. Can you imagine going, let's go back to the Bluegrass Airport. I like your airport, let me tell you. Nice and cozy, uncrowded, very clean, just great. And you board an airplane, say, let's take an American Eagle aircraft, and you're inside. And the pilot is welcoming you, saying, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take you to Chicago this morning. But in actual fact, I'm not the pilot. I'm a father of the pilot. I never went to the pilot school. My son is sick today, and he couldn't come. The flight attendants are all here, but my son left behind a manual for me. I found it on the shelf of this plane on how to fly this plane. So I'm reading it, I've read it 1/3, so I know how to do a takeoff. But once we're up in the air, I'll read the rest of the manual to learn how to land you in Chicago. What would you do if you were inside that aircraft? I think you would rush as quickly as possible to jump out and escape. You would run to the exit, to the emergency exits and inflate those rafts and just leave the plane, because you don't want that person to fly you. You need someone who spent years and years in learning the navigation principles, learning how avionics works, how to land, how to take off. And definitely you don't promote a graduate of a flying school to captaincy unless he's had 5, 6, 7 or even 10 years of serving as a flight officer. as someone who is on the right-hand side. It's too early for him to be on the left-hand side in the captain's seat. Well, I asked you a question. The birds, they never go to the flying school. And yet, some of them migrate as far as 14,000 kilometers. It's a distance from here in Kentucky to Johannesburg in South Africa. How could they fly that far? Some birds which were marked with special electronic sensors, they flew up to 38,000 kilometers. They almost flew around the globe. By the way, forgive me for using kilometers a little bit. I'll get used to miles, okay? In a few days, I'll become imperial in my mind, and I'll use miles, pounds, and ounces, and all of that complex American measurement system. I'm in metric still, and so please give me a concession. If you hear kilometers, just remember he's from Australia, okay? And he's not from the civilized world. Anyway, here the birds fly, and they know everything about flight. An eagle who flies 2 miles up in the sky, you see I'm using miles now, 3 kilometers, it has eyes that enable him to see a mouse from 2 miles apart when he drops down and catches his prey. Who gave them all these advanced avionics? Or take the bees. Okay, here in the middle of the United States, a lot of honey is produced. And honey is so popular in America that it is from America that we have this statement when husbands call their wives what? Honey, okay? Our wives are honeys, okay? They're so sweet, they're so wonderful. All right, sometimes. And anyway, some wives are too sweet too. The bees. One American biologist, he is an entomologist, spent about 4 decades learning the behavior of the bees. And he discovered that bees use a complex way of telling how to fly, where to fly, and where to find the honey, where to find the nectar. So first, a working bee goes to the meadow, to the field where she finds the necessary plants and flowers, the nectar she needs to produce. She needs to produce honey in the beehive. So she takes samples into little baskets which are on its legs. And then it flies back to the beehive, and in front of its friends, the other working bees, it starts dancing. And it does something that is very popular in modern fitness clubs. It does belly dance, okay? And it belly dances, and then a host of bees takes off and flies to the meadow where that bee had just been. And these scientists often would take that intelligence bee and keep it in the beehive and still observe that the bees flew exactly where she had been just before. He discovered that in the belly dance, if it makes 10 movements by its belly in 15 seconds, then the distance of flight is roughly 4 miles. And he made a lot of measurements and came to an unavoidable conclusion that the bees are using mathematics to calculate the distance of flight. And they're using complex mathematics like logarithms. Now, teachers in this audience, do you know in which class in the American school you study logarithms? Not in the first class, not in kindy. You are studying logarithms only in high school in the last years of school. And often for the final exams, you're not even asked about logarithms because they are very complicated. Well, the bees are using them all the time on a regular basis as a language of communication. Who taught the bees these secrets? Who taught the bees, who never went to a mathematics school, the high mathematics, and moreover, its application to practical life? In ancient book of Job, 3,500 years ago, it was advised, ask the animals and they will teach you. The birds of the sky and they will tell you. And let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of who? Could you read it for me? Of the Lord has done this. There must be something supernatural behind all of these things. Well, wait a minute, the skeptic will say. Wait. But in my school, in the textbook, I was reading that we as human beings, we came down from the trees. And this being, this ape on the screen, is our great grandma. Okay? And this is just a picture for you guys. If you don't recognize your grandma, that's your grandma. And now, did we actually come down from the trees? And did we actually originate from the ape or monkey-like beings? Well, there are certain problems with this opinion. First of all, when Charles Darwin was producing the theory of evolution, in one of the chapters, and by the way, I suggest you read Darwin and his book, The Origin of Species by Natural Selection. Wow. Oh, somebody is going to help me. Now, if somebody is singing when I'm speaking, my speaking will be much better and it sounds great. But anyway, so Darwin, he said the big problem with his theory is that we don't have enough archaeological evidence. Some people are saying, well, but didn't the scientists find, oh, please don't switch that music. Or maybe I'm catching radio. Maybe it's the car radio and I'm just catching it with my microphone. If it keeps doing that, well, just disengage me and I'll speak into this microphone, okay? If it keeps playing that beautiful country music, I'll just speak into the microphone, okay? Anyway, let's go back to Darwin. Don't worry, we'll finish on time. 7:30 is our deadline. I'm going to finish my presentation in roughly 7 minutes. So the number of bones which were ever found on this planet of ancient people, you could put them into a large American travel suitcase. That's all. That's all the bones ever found of so-called ancient people. Australopithecus, his bones were recently identified as the bones of a big monkey, not a human being. In 1960s, in the state of Nebraska, they found a tooth. And they even drew a man who was called Nebraskan Man. He even got into scientific publications when just years later they discovered that the tooth belonged to a wild American pig, not to a human being. Some made a human being out of that tooth. Piltdown Man, 1912, in Great Britain, they found a jaw and a few ribs, and they said that is the most ancient man who ever lived, the Piltdown Man. And it took them 40 years to discover in 1952 that Piltdown Man was a fake, because Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, he took the jaw of a woman and the ribs of an orangutan, and he colored them, and he painted them and put them in the ground, and some people painted an ancient man. Those bones are not enough. They're so little and so few that they could not serve as valid evidence to prove that we came down from the trees, from the monkeys. The other big problem of the theory of evolution is genetics. Now, most of you look like your parents because of the genes. You have genes, right? And that is why you look like a parent. One person said, "Why, Mom, if I have genes, why is it that I look like a neighbor, not like my dad?" But we have genes which pass on the hereditary information. Well, with genetics, there's a big challenge. Genetics tells us that there could be microevolution. You could have the change of the color of your skin, the change of the color of your hair, some visual anatomic changes, but human beings will always remain human beings and monkeys shall always remain monkeys. The discovery of the genetic code of human beings, the so-called genome, shows that people of different races, Europeoid race, Negroid race, Australoids, Mongoloids, they are all hardly ever different from each other. The differences are so minuscule that they're hardly unidentifiable. We as human beings, we as human race, we have the same genetic code, which makes, in a sense, us all relatives. And also genetics tells us that if you make alterations in genes, you will not get a better kind. You will not get an improvement, which is necessary for the long-term, multi-billion-year evolution. You would get either deformity or death. There is a chain of hereditary genetic diseases. For example, the so-called Hunter syndrome. A child has a genetic malignancy and grows up and dies at the age of 12, 13 years old. Now you need expensive medication to keep that child alive and progress roughly $500,000 a year to battle with the so-called Hunter syndrome. Or the so-called Down disease. Have you heard about the Down disease? The poor child looks good, but he is deficient in his development. Or the cat's cry. It's a very rare genetic disease when a child is not crying like a human being but is meowing like a cat. There are many genetic diseases which all tell us that alterations in genes do not produce a better kind. They produce a deformity or death. So genetics is a science which is a strong argument against the theory of evolution. Even the very existence of life. How could life make itself? Because in the theory of evolution, life made itself. In some primordial ocean, in some bouillon, in some primordial soup, molecules collided with each other and produced life. Well, you all know that for the existence of life, you need proteins. In the 1960s, in North America, a number of biologists were trying to produce one molecule of live protein, which would be the first step to artificially create life. The experiment lasted for 2 years and was finished in disaster because nothing was produced except poisons. They did not produce the live molecules of proteins, they produced poisons. And we all know that we look like our parents because we have our parents' DNA. DNA is a molecule which is like a computer disk. It's a hard drive which stores the hereditary information, which predicts of how you will look like, how you live like, all your diseases, everything that is stored in you. And to produce one molecule of protein, you need the so-called RNA. It's another molecule, the information RNA, which comes to the DNA and is copying all the information from it. And then it goes to the factory of protein in your cells, which is called the ribosome. And the ribosome sits on the information RNA, am I speaking too fast? And then sends signals, electrolytic signals to transportation RNAs, which bring the so-called amino acids. There are 21 amino acids, and it takes from 2 to 10 seconds to produce one molecule of protein. Wow. I hope it's not too fast for you, my friends. But that's the simplest description of the production of life in your cells. And you need numerous factors, you need enzymes, you need certain liquids, you need so many circumstances for the life to be produced that it makes it absolutely impossible for the life to make itself. The self-origin of life is a myth, and it takes more faith to believe that life made itself out of nothing, in the complete absence of mind, than to believe in the intelligent creator who is above the universe. And I believe firmly that we did not come down from the trees, that we have a supernatural origin. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind, that you are mindful of them, human beings, that you care for them? Well, some people today offer us a concept that human beings are highly organized animals, that a man, though well-behaved, is at best a monkey shaved. Some people believe that we are just a cosmic dust, an accident, a product of chance. Well, this book, which is at the foundation of American culture and history, says, don't worry, don't be afraid. You are worth more than what? Than many sparrows. This book puts a human being on a high pedestal and says that a human being has supernatural origin, like all life, and is worthy of freedom and love. This book proclaims the existence of the supernatural God. And many scientists believed in him. Albert Einstein believed in the existence of the Creator. Charles Darwin, if you go to England today, you will find his grave in Westminster Abbey, the main church of England. Nobody knows today in the civilized world that Charles Darwin died a believer. And at the end of his life, he wrote about many problems that the theory of evolution has. And I believe in evolution, but I believe in microevolution. But I don't believe in macroevolution, which is a transfer one species to another. I believe in microevolution, which would happen locally within every kind of animals, plants, or human beings. But I don't believe in macroevolution, on an evolution on a general scale. I am a creationist. I belong to the camp in the world of science which call themselves creationists. I believe that this world was created originally. And I also believe that this creator is not just a cosmic force, not some mysterious heavenly absolute. I believe that he is a living being. Ah, sovereign Lord, Jeremiah the prophet said, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. Nothing is, could you read it for me? Is too hard for you. He is omnipotent. He can do all things, which means he can come and help you in your everyday life. And the other text says, oh, I like this. Now, gentlemen, why don't you just switch the text forward? I will be giving you a sign. And like this, okay. And it says, even the very hairs of your head are all what? All numbered. So if there's hair on your head or if there's no hair left, God knows it. He is omniscient. He knows all things. He is omnipresent. He fills the whole universe with his presence. I will be waving to you and you will be able to check my slides. Before the word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely, the ancient psalmist said. And there's the most beautiful feature which exists in this great heavenly being, because God is, read it for me, love. He is love. He cares. Now, we're coming to the conclusion of our first program. Loneliness. Is there a way out? Millions of people around the world, including the civilized world, are suffering from loneliness, the brokenness of hearts, depression, guilt, and many others. And they ask a question, is there a way out? Well, let me give you an intelligent suggestion. I believe that from the depth of the universe, the Creator is hurrying, He's rushing to help human beings, His creation. It says, now acquaint yourself with Him and be what? Could you read it for me? Be at peace. Thereby good will come to you. There is a source of peace. There is a way out of many negative emotions. There's someone who has enormous interest in all the human beings. When I consider heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which I have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them? Who are we as human beings? By the way, you are drawing us backwards. Please, okay. Move forward. Okay. Okay. No, you're going backwards. All right. Anyway, gentlemen, you're going backwards. All right. Let's put us the hands. Well, thank you very much. There's someone who has a plan and a purpose for the life of every one of you. And we could come to Him at any moment of our lives, 24/7, and He will always accept, always receive, always forgive, and always fill your heart and soul and mind with peace and satisfaction. And then your life will bloom. And the sunset will not sometimes be very depressing and disappointment. And your life will be full of the inner sense of satisfaction that you're not alone in this universe, that there's someone who has a lot of interest and a lot of care for you. And there's someone who loves you and loves me. I'm coming to the conclusion of my first lecture, and my question to you at the end, overall, is this lecture clear for you tonight? Thank you. And let me ask you another question. Who would like to be happy in their lives? Could I see the hands of those who would really like to be satisfied and happy in their lives? Could I see your hands? Oh, that's wonderful. You won't mind if before you hear a wonderful music item, I will just say a little short prayer for God to give you all the heavenly benefits and give you peace. Dear God, the Creator of the universe, I want to thank you for this beautiful Lexingtonian audience. And my prayer is that you'll come to their lives and give them peace in their hearts, peace and happiness. And we're praying that you will give your heavenly benefits not only to Lexington, but to the entire state of Kentucky and this wonderful, amazing land of America. Amen.